there's a lot to sell here. All right, welcome into the report for November the 11th. It is Veterans Day. Big thank you to all the men and women serving our country. And we're going to dive right into it as we wrap up week 10 with the last thing we saw, which was Monday night's 10-7 Eagles win over the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. I think we learned a little bit about both teams. The first thing is the Packers offense can't seem to get on track. And I'm starting to wonder a little bit about their offensive line. The one area where Philly will test anyone is along the lines of scrimmage. And if you got a deficiency on the offensive line, if you got a deficiency on the defensive line, the Eagles will make that show up. And I think you saw a little bit of that with the Packers on Monday night. In addition, with Tucker Kraft out, you wonder if they have a go-to guy in the passing game. They got a lot of good players. Luke Musgrave stepping in at tight end. Yesterday you had Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson and Bo Melton moving back over and Romeo Doubs all chipping in. Do they have somebody you can rely on? Now, they didn't have everybody out there. Matthew Golden wasn't out there. But who's going to be the guy that they're going to be going to in the biggest spots as we get further into November and into December? I think that's still an open question. As for the Eagles, this is more proof that the Eagles have to win a different way than they did a year ago. Last year, they won behind their run game. Saquon Barkley obviously going over 2,000 yards. And they were a very complete team. I don't know that they have the same sort of team this year. It seems like some teams, the Packers included, last night on defense, have had success stacking the box, taking Saquon Barkley away, and forcing Jalen Hurts to beat them. So does the formula change now for the Eagles? We've seen the formula change at various points over the course of Nick Sirianni's 5 years. I think it's one of his strengths. He's built teams that are able to win different ways. Now we're going to see if this team can win with this defense, at least for the time being. All right, our second topic is actually probably the biggest story from Monday, and that was the Giants firing Brian Daboll, who's just short of 4 years in New York. The Giants are 2-8. There are obvious reasons for this. The trajectory of the franchise is the biggest one. They've gotten worse in each year that Brian Daboll has been there. And they've lost 4 games in a row, but I don't think it's just that they've lost 4 games in a row. It's how they've lost those 4 games. They blew a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter against Denver. And once again, they blew a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter against Chicago. It just does not look like that team is heading in the right direction right now. And I think organizationally, they believe that they've got the core there for a winner. And look, like there have been injuries. Malik Neighbors is hurt, but you've got a franchise left tackle in Andrew Thomas. You've now got a rookie quarterback you feel like you can build around in Jackson Dart. Cam Scatterbo showed promise before he got hurt as well. And then on defense, you've got Dexter Lawrence, who hasn't played to the level he was at last year. Brian Burns, who has had a great year. A young player in Abdul Carter, who might become the defensive rookie of the year. So you've got pieces there. It just hasn't shown up on the field. And so now they're going to get a look over the next 2 months at Mike Kafka and evaluate where they are organizationally. But I think the really big thing to take away from where they're at right now is how many different things they've tried and how they actually gave this one some runway. So if you want to go back to walking away from Tom Coughlin, they tried the young offensive coach route in hiring Ben McAdoo, elevating him up off their staff. That didn't work. Then they bring in a veteran offensive coach in Pat Shurmur. That doesn't work. Those guys only last 2 years apiece. Then you go to Joe Judge, who was sort of the battleship commander type, the program leader. He's a special teams coach by trade, but they brought him in to be an overseer of the program. That didn't work. So 2 years. You didn't want to pull the plug that quick on Brian Daboll, so you gave this one a little bit more time. But this was another dip into all right, like let's invest in the quarterback position. Let's get somebody who can develop quarterbacks like a McAdoo, like a Shurmur, and that didn't work. So I think what they have to go back and do now, and they have 2 months to do it, is take a hard look in every bucket. And this cannot be about finding one guy or another. This cannot be about just finding somebody to develop Jackson Dart. This has got to be about somebody reimagining the franchise, figuring out a different way to do things. And I look at like what Joe Shane's been able to do there over the course of his 3+ years, and they haven't won, and that's a huge problem. But one of the reasons they're hanging on to him is he was able to modernize their operation and get them to see things a little bit differently in a little bit of a different way organizationally. Can you find a coach who's capable of doing that? That to me is the big thing. I can't say for sure that they're going to get this one right because they got the last 4 wrong. But there are good people at the top of that organization, and they have something to sell now. This is obviously a Tiffany job. This is one of the flagship franchises of the National Football League, right there with the Packers and the Steelers and the Cowboys. So you have that going for you. You have a young quarterback who a lot of people are going to like in Jackson Dart. You're in New York. So there's a lot to sell here. I think it's incumbent on the Giants to look at everything. Look at offensive coaches, look at defensive coaches, look at first-time head coaches, look at experienced head coaches, look at college head coaches. You have to turn over every rock. And maybe that leads them back down the road of trying to hire a Nick Saban or a Bill Belichick. Maybe that leads them down the road of going and hiring a young offensive coach. Whatever you wind up doing, I think it's incumbent on the Giants now to use the time that they have to look under every rock and try to find somebody who can lead their program going forward, not just lead the offense or coach the quarterback, but lead the program going forward and work together with some of the people in place, because they have turned over a lot of the rest of their staff, much more so than they did during any of their other coaching changes since 2022. And that brings us to our third and final topic, which is Joe Burrow returning to the practice field on Monday in Cincinnati. Some unexpected news, great news for the Bengals, and it really shifts the dynamic going forward for that Cincinnati team. And to understand how that's all changed, let's roll the clock back a couple of weeks. They were 2-4. Joe Flacco had just made his debut as the quarterback. It looked like this was going to be a game of survival. You trade for Joe Flacco to try to give yourselves the chance to still be alive when Burrow gets back in the lineup. At the time, we thought it was going to be middle of December. Then they have the thrilling win on Thursday night over the Pittsburgh Steelers. That gets them to 3-4. Now you're looking at it. You got the Jets, you got the Bears. You've got a good shot to get to 5-4 going into your bye, which gives you a great chance to stay alive into mid-December, again, when you're expecting to have Burrow back. Then they blow it against the Jets. Then they blow it in excruciating fashion against the Bears. Now you're 3-6. So where you're at in the standings has changed. Then you go into your bye. Now you're coming out of your bye, and now the timeline on Burrow has changed. So the pressure has ramped up in just about every way for that Bengals team. They won't have Burrow back in the lineup this week. Jack Taylor already said that. They've got the Steelers on Sunday. So again, it's changed in that it looks like Burrow is going to be back sooner than you thought. So you're closer to that. And it's changed in that your record isn't as good as you thought it'd be. And so every one of these games becomes more of a must win. So must win on Sunday against Pittsburgh, a struggling Steelers team. Can you beat them again? Can you get to 4-6? Maybe then you have Burrow back, maybe not. If you don't have Burrow back, again, there's pressure on everybody to go out and beat the Patriots, who've played really well, but from a talent perspective aren't in a different class than you. In fact, I think most people would have told you going into the year that the Bengals are more talented than the Patriots. So again, every one of these games has added importance now, because Burrow's timeline's pushed up and because the Bengals record isn't as good as you thought it would be. Appreciate you guys coming out. We got a couple more Breer reports coming up for you this week. In midweek, we'll have a mailbag edition, and we will have, as always, a Breer report to wrap up the week and preview week 11. You guys can get to me on social media at Albert Breer, on Twitter at Albert R. Breer, on Facebook at Albert_Breer on Instagram. You can also leave comments right below here on the YouTube. Appreciate it. We'll see you guys later in the week.